Today, Griffin and I have the pleasure of having Max Pumfrey on the podcast. Max, Griffin, and I served together in the same cavalry troop when we were all in the Army. We've all since transitioned out of the military, and he's got a great story about how persistence and focused effort landed him a phenomenal job at Honeywell post-transition.
Most people you talk to when transitioning out of the military have never actually transitioned out themselves. You're probably getting a bunch of opinions from people who plan on staying in until retirement and have no idea how to actually show empathy for your situation. This podcast is about providing fresh perspectives and a front row seat for conversations with successful veterans doing big things after leaving the military.
See, it's like there's a lot going on there. It's nice and curly in the back. When I got to try and put stuff in it, right, when I go to work, because I don't want to look like a 70s porn star. So you got to put a little product in it to try and keep it down a little bit. The hair, to keep the hair down.
Oh, okay. I'm with you now. If you just went with the mustache, you could go places. I'm telling you.
Do you guys have internet in Hawaii yet?
They haven't finished running the fiber underneath the ocean.
He's on 3G, I think. There you go.
Yeah. Like an ATAC feed.
I mean, it's like literally, my internet is paid for by my HOA, so I have no other option. And it's just for this. Griffin's probably so annoyed because I'm always the problem.
He's been saying that since Germany.
Yeah, exactly. But
I've never heard of an HOA paying your internet.
I wish they would pay for my internet. Well, maybe not if it's poor quality, I guess.
Yeah.
It's not usually an issue unless we're doing this, right? Like I've never felt like it was too slow, but
you're gold right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
don't move.
I have a problem. I've realized that I would pay for a way too expensive HOA if they had a pickleball court as a part of it.
We have two. And yeah, we have two.
I'm moving to Kansas City. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. We'll tell you, we have a golf course, a pool, two pools, two pickleball courts, and two tennis courts.
Wow.
Nice.
So come on. And we're on a lake. We have a lake.
Wow. What part of Kansas City are you in?
Southern Kansas City. It's a suburb called Raymore. So we're on the south side. It's going to continue to grow here before too long, I think.
Are you like on the western side, like directly south or west at all? Like
due south of Kansas City. Okay. So
I've been to Olathe and Lenexa a bunch.
Yeah. So it's like a 20-minute drive to Olathe.
Okay.
Sometimes we go there for good food because Raymore is relatively small. One of the smaller suburbs, like 20,000 people. And it used to be one of the more rural areas. And so now it's starting to develop quite a bit.
Okay. Yeah, we've got a company.
And by 20-minute drive, you mean probably more than 20 miles away, whereas the 20-minute drive for us is I could probably run there faster. It's like 20 minutes for us is like the closest gas station. It's only 1.5 miles away.
Yeah, you kick the girls out and they beat you there to get some energy out.
Right. No, the traffic is so bad here. Once school starts too, it's just even worse. Max, you're a prime example of who we want to highlight on this podcast. I think you're somewhat familiar with what we're trying to do here, but just to lay it out, I mean, we're really trying to give unique perspectives of people who have transitioned for those who are looking to transition. And I think the more unique experiences we can get, the better, because everybody's experience might be different as to why they're leaving the military or what they're getting into. And I think you are an example of a high-ranking NCO, transitioning after retirement, but getting into, something that is quite unique in my opinion. It's still within government in the realm of military. I'll let you talk through it and explain it, but I think it's a unique transition and something that due to your capabilities and the success that you had just as a person and as a leader, I'm sure you're crushing it. We talked about a little bit in depth as to what you're doing, but I'm looking forward to questioning how the transition went because we haven't really heard too much about specifically how your transition was. You want to start with kind of your background, your military background, what got you to up to your transition?
Yeah. So I joined the Army in 2002. So September 11th happened, senior year of high school. I say that, but I also want to include that I probably wasn't going to college because frankly, I just didn't apply myself in high school. And so I wasn't making the grades to support a long and successful time in college, right? So September 11th aided in my choice to pursue the military. Originally came in as a 19 kilo, realized after my first deployment, I probably enjoy being on my feet a little bit more. So re-enlisted to be a 19 Delta Cav Scout. And also I got airborne in my contract and that's the life that I followed after that. So some of the big positions that I was able to do, all my key leadership time was in airborne organizations, the 82nd and the 173rd, which is where we all work together. And I was an ROTC instructor at Arizona State University. I had the opportunity to be an OC at Fort Irwin for a little while, very short while, was selected for the Sergeant's Majors course. And so what drove me towards transition? So from very early on in the Army, I knew I wanted to be a Sergeant Major one day. I think that I probably could have pursued continued to pursue and had a really long, successful career as a senior enlisted leader within the Army. I think that I probably would have been at the nominative level. Really love the Army. Well, I love the people in the Army, right? About 10 years in the Army, I realized that I don't think I love the Army as much as I really thought that I loved the Army. What I found out was that I really love the people in the Army because the people are what make everything happen. And I had that mindset that, we have a lot of people that said, mission first, and then we changed to mission first, people always. But, sometimes that's just lip service. Where I tried to lay my priorities was in people, because if you genuinely care for and take care of the people, the mission is going to take care of itself, right? So I focused on training and personnel, knowing that the mission would take care of itself after that. But so selected for the Sergeant's Majors course and went and attended while I was in the Sergeant's Majors course is what led to my decision to transition out of service earlier than originally anticipated. So in April of 22, my brother-in-law passed away at 42 of a heart attack. Also why I was in school at the Sergeant's Majors Academy or the Sergeant's Majors course. My mother-in-law was diagnosed with breast cancer. My wife and I both lost, between the two of us, we lost 3 grandparents, an uncle, a cousin. And so really after my brother-in-law passed away, 3 days after he passed away, when I was still in school, my wife, Stephanie, and I were out for a walk and I told her, I said, I think I'm done. I think I'm ready to retire. And from then on, my focus became, hey, how do I continue to take care of my family first and foremost for the rest of our lives? And that was a really hard decision to make. And it was really hard. I always thought that I was one of the toughest people. I other than laughter and smiling, I don't think I show a whole lot of emotion, right? When it came to my retirement ceremony, I don't know who was able to understand anything that I said, because I was an emotional wreck. I was crying. I would even go as far as saying I was bawling, right? Because all that emotion just hit me, that I knew I had cared passionately and cared for the men and women in our service for a long time, and will continue to care for people that serve. And so I'm going to share something real quick. So I saw this on social media. I'm part of a Sergeant's Majors group on social media, and one of them had posted something that they had saw at a 2-star retirement ceremony, I believe it was. So this retiring 2-star at his speech, he said, retirement is hardest when it's the right time, because your attitude is good and you remain fit, but it's the right time because it means you leave a positive influence and go out on your own terms. And, I believe that was true for myself. I went out on my terms. And so for that, I am able to look back at my 22 years of service and know that it was 22 years well spent. I didn't wait for the Army to tell me it was time to leave. I made that decision myself. So the memories I do have are fond, and I'm thankful for the support and the service and all the opportunities that it created for my wife, my 2 daughters, and myself, and really our future, because it has set me up to where I am now during my transition. Do you want me to keep going on the transition piece, or you want me to hold a little bit?
Sure. No, that's fine.
So when I made that determination a little over 2 years ago that I was going to retire, so I put together a plan, right? So I drew on a whiteboard in the center. I knew that the only place that we were going to retire was Kansas City. From there, I had bubbles that said, the private industry, the public industry, government contracting, referrals, and subcategories under that. And I just started expanding my research, right? And Google became my best friend. Like, hey, what are the Fortune 100, if any? What are the Fortune 500, both private, public? How successful are these companies? What's the growth look like within these companies? So I started narrowing my field. And then when I became in the window for Skillbridge opportunities and hiring our heroes, I jumped on the opportunities to use hiring our heroes and was accepted to use hiring our heroes and got a fellowship, a corporate fellowship through Honeywell Federal Manufacturing and Technology. So most people don't know that Honeywell has a federal manufacturing and technology portion because it's such a large Fortune 100 company. But they are the contract owner for the Kansas City National Security Campus. And we support the Department of Energy and the National Nuclear Security Administration, right? So we build about 85% of the non-nuclear components for nuclear weapons at our facility. So not Department of Defense, but Department of Energy, very heavily tied into national security, national defense at a strategic level. So that, my intent when coming into Honeywell, because it was definitely in my top list of places to look into and potentially find employment, was to find something that would continue to provide purpose and that I would be proud of, right? And continuing to serve. And, anytime that there's an opportunity to serve and support our country, that's an opportunity that I want to continue to jump on and support. So happens to be a really great organization, a lot of great people, roughly 7,000 employees at our facilities. And, our veteran population is a little bit under 700 people. This week, I was actually elected to be one of the vice chairs of the Veteran Employee Network for our location. So looking forward to continuing to support the veteran community within our building and outside of our building. When I was here on fellowship due to clearance, my clearance investigation stuff not being completed, I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with our union employees, which the large majority of the veterans serving at the Kansas City National Security Campus are junior enlisted soldiers, right? Because they are filling a lot of our union positions. So in conversation with a lot of these men and women, I'm finding that a lot of them did not file for any sort of VA benefit, whether it's education, home loans, disability, whatever, right? So my goal since I've been here is to promote awareness throughout the veteran community at KCNSC to better support the veteran community, but also to provide some support to the organization, because the better we're taking care of those within our organization, the better they will support the organization as a whole, just like we're familiar with doing in the organizations we've served across the United States Army.
I want to get back to the work you're doing there, but just to highlight. So how did you go about the process? You said you made bubbles of like the options that were out there. How did you go about that? Because I think a lot of people, when they're getting out, if they don't have a clear direction in mind, it's like, where do I even start? How do I even start narrowing this down? There's 1,000 people to talk to, 1,000 different options. How did you even, what's square one?
Yeah. So the easiest thing for me to determine was, so throughout my 18 years of marriage, we never wanted to live in Kansas City, right? This is where Stephanie is from. And we've lived, all over the United States. We've lived in Europe. Kansas City wasn't an option, right? Due to our concerns and our desire to want to support our families, it led us to Kansas City. So that was the very centerpiece, right? So I knew with 100% certainty that I was going to Kansas City, Missouri, because Stephanie's from Missouri and hates Kansas side, right? Huge feud.
Of course.
But so I knew that Kansas City was at the center of the bubble. So that essentially assisted in supporting my search criteria, right? So everything revolved around Kansas City. That's the biggest issue I think a lot of people have, is narrowing down where they want to go or where they want to be. I think most service members typically go back to home of record or wherever their last duty station was, because that's easy, right? It's easy to go to those places rather than go somewhere where they're not. So with my Skillbridge opportunity, when I did hiring our heroes, so I had to get approval for over 150-mile radius because I was stationed at Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina, and we picked up and moved during the Skillbridge to support the opportunity here in Kansas City. So that was at the very center, was Kansas City. And so from there, it allowed me to look at public industry, private industry, contracting, government work within the Kansas City area. So, there is a very saturated field in the transitional space, some for profit, some non for profit, right? And so I stayed heavily involved on social media and predominantly the non-for-profit, but there's some really good people out there that people can follow to support. I'm sure most are familiar with like Michael Quinn, right? Michael Quinn, I almost religiously followed a lot of the steps that he said to do, and that support a lot of opportunities. So when it came to finding a location for like Honeywell, for example, so in the search criteria in LinkedIn, I put Honeywell, right? And then I narrowed the search down to Kansas City. So that took it from like 300 or 600,000 people to, I think it's 300,000 people, something like that, to 6,000 people, right? And then I narrowed the field down to people whose past history included United States Army, right? And then that narrowed it down to like 160 people. And so now I just identified 160 people that live in Kansas City that work at Honeywell, and I would start sending out messages, right? Hey, my name is Max. I'm getting ready to retire from the Army. I see that you were also in the Army. What did you do? I see you work at Honeywell. I'm looking to learn more about Honeywell and your industry and what you do. But I did that for, I don't know, probably 20, 30, 50 different organizations, and started networking my way in to learn more about the organization. And so when I would come in on leave, I would meet up with people that I had met on LinkedIn and had no prior engagement or understanding of who they were. We'd meet for coffee and I'd have conversations, and, they would assist and guide me to the right places. So, like I said, it was following. And then, I have a lot of good friends that had also recently retired. So receiving feedback for them. But the center started with Kansas City. Now, when it came to identifying what I wanted to do, I still don't know what I want to do. Right. And I think there's a misconception. There's a lot of people out there in the space that say, hey, you have to identify what you want to be before you get out. And I think that's extremely false. You have a lot of people that are trying to sell certificates that say, hey, everybody in the service is a project manager. Cool. That's mildly interesting, but that's not the case, right? Not everybody is a project manager, nor does everybody want to be a project manager or whatever the case may be, right? So what has assisted me thus far is I am in a large organization. I'm in a Fortune 500 company or Fortune 100, and they have, similar to the Army, when I was a recruiter, we'd always talk about how we have 150 different job opportunities. Honeywell could almost say the same thing, right? We got IT, we got cyber, we got security, we got manufacturing, we got quality, we got HR, we got talent acquisition, we got learning and development. So we have all these things, right? And what they have not done is put me into a funnel and say, hey, you have to only look at these things, right? So one of the things they do is they encourage you to learn and grow and find out what else the industry has to provide. So it's pretty commonplace to find people that have been in different niche occupations throughout our industry there, because it's about learning, right? So throughout the fellowship, every day, not every day, every week, I was having coffee with probably 3 to 5 different people that I'd never met before. And I still do that. And I still meet with people, usually 1 or 2 now, people that I've never had conversations with before, to learn about what they do in the industry, to better narrow down what I want to do. I know that this is a company that I am really passionate about, and I care about what they're doing. So I know that I could spend an extended period of time here, but I don't know that I always want to be in quality. I really like quality, and we have some amazing people, and I'm 100% behind what we do in the quality department, but I don't know if that's the thing that I want to do forever. Maybe it isn't, but until I get as much information as I can, I'm just trying to soak up and absorb everything. And what has been helpful too is tying in some of my military experience to provide understanding of what I'm doing today. So being in the quality department for nuclear components, right? Non-nuclear components to nuclear weapons, is I correlated back to our days as jump masters. All 3 of us were jump masters together, right? Going through JMPI, if you make a major deficiency and somebody exits the aircraft, you potentially just cost somebody their life, right? So I tie that into what we're doing when I speak with my teammates is, if heaven forbid one day we have to push a red button, maybe it's red, maybe it's purple. Nobody really knows, right? But if somebody has to push a button, we want to make sure that thing goes off, right? We don't have to rely on other people. We want to rely on quality and producing quality products to ensure national security is met.
I hope you realize I'm now picturing you doing JMPI on a warhead in Kansas City. So I'd love to see the sequence on that one.
I wear a helmet throughout the facility, so I'm good to go. Face paint and everything. It's been great.
I hope it's got some lettuce on it, because otherwise you're wrong.
Right. How could you exit an aircraft without lettuce on your helmet?
Well, you couldn't do it safely. That's for sure.
Right. I love what you said, and I want people to take away, like, you don't need to have 22 years of experience in the military to take what you just said and apply it to a transition. Your transition, what you're saying is you were deliberate about it, and depending on what types of positions you were looking to get into based on your 22-year career, you honed in on that by reaching out and meeting with the correct people. Whether you have 4 years of experience in the military or 10 or 22 or 30, I think somebody could do the same thing as long as they just start testing the waters, see what level you could get into, and maybe go higher than what you think you might be able to attain. Just because you have 4 years in the military doesn't mean that you don't have a lot of value to add to these organizations. And if you start to have these conversations and it's just a little bit too much for what your credentials have and what you're able to bring to the team, well, then maybe there's a prep, sort of position you can get into that would then lead to a higher level position. But I think what you said is deliberate. You have to put the work in. These things just don't fall into people's laps.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah. So, during the Skillbridge, I was in Skillbridge with other members, service members as well from other branches. And it is easy to identify who is willing to put in the work and who isn't, right? It is very easy to see people that show up because some employers will tell you day one, hey, this is not a guarantee, right? This is a placement test to see if you're the right fit for the team. And, so if you're the individual that wants to sit back and sit at the computer screen and not be productive or proactive on a regular basis and not be value added, you're probably not going to get an opportunity, right? But if you maximize the opportunity and continue to show your value to the organization, it's going to end an opportunity. And there's a couple of other things that I've told people because I continue to try and support people that have questions. So 100 out of 100 times, I will always bet on myself, right? So I know both of you extremely well, and I know that you're both great. But if it was the three of us, even though I know how great the two of you are, 100 out of 100 times, I would bet on myself over the two of you, unless it's double jumps. Then Griffin's got me. But 100 out of 100 times, I would always bet on myself. And the other 10, you have to also take a chance, so I was also doing things like reaching out to the president of the Kansas City Chiefs and the Kansas City Royals. And I knew damn well that they weren't going to respond to me. But if they did respond to me, now I have an opportunity to potentially do something super awesome, right? But if they don't respond, which they didn't, so if they're listening,
Not yet.
help a brother out, right? But but if they don't respond, I'm still in the same place I am today. And frankly, I'm in a really good place, right? Because I have my time that I served. I have the people that I served with that I care a ton about. And the most important thing is I have my wife and my daughters, right? So I'm in a really good place. So even if somebody doesn't take a chance on me, I'm going to take a chance on myself and always put myself out there to maximize opportunity.
I love how much you put yourself out there throughout the process, because I think a lot of people, one of their problems is they don't have enough data points. Like they haven't truly drawn up enough information to make an informed decision or really know what is the right direction for them. But you mentioned yourself, you probably had several hundred at least conversations over social media and probably near that many in-person coffees or whatever meetups. So you were gathering enough data that it was like, yeah, Honeywell is the right fit for me within this department of Honeywell. So I love how you put the pieces together when all you had was a location. And then from there, you just gathered data until it made the overall picture more clear. I think a lot of people can learn from that. Like there's a great book called Designing Your Life where they talk about prototyping and doing like little miniature versions of the life that you think you might want to live before you fully jump into it with both feet. And it sounds like you did exactly that. You did a lot of little prototypes and it led you to, a great next step for you.
Yeah, it really was. And some of it too is having tough conversations with yourself and having tough conversations with your family. And then one of the hardest things is, that was also a driving factor was, so I'd ask Stephanie like, hey, what are your thoughts? What do you think? And her constant response was, well, I trust you to make the right decision for our family. And although she thought that was like comforting, right? That she trusted me that much, like that was the ultimate stressor, right? It was like, holy crap, man, I have to do this now. I have to do this now. Everyth's on me, right?
Yeah, I'm looking for a sounding board.
Yeah. So having those stressors and that drive, and just the will to really get out there and be productive. And I think a lot of us are, and I think service members have a lot to offer, but it's only about what you showcase, right? So if you don't showcase any talent, then they're not going to think that you have any talent. And really what I found is supportive is, providing influence, holding people accountable, and having tough, candid conversations and being transparent. The very first job offer I had, I turned down. And that was one of the scariest things that I had ever done in my life because it was a guaranteed job post retirement. And I turned it down. I said no. Like I came home almost in tears because I didn't know what to do. But I believed that much in myself that other opportunities would arise, and they did. But like that's terrifying when you have an opportunity and you're like, no, I am better than that. And you believe in yourself and you stay committed. And I had non-negotiables crossed along the way, right? These are the things that I'm not willing to negotiate, or these are the things that I am willing to negotiate. The non-negotiables are important. And for me, it went back to like family and time with family. If any of the job took away from opportunity with my family, that was a hard no. It was a hard pass for me. And that's why I declined the first opportunity.
I love that you mentioned JMPI and the jump master skills that have translated so clearly to what you're doing now. And then you also mentioned having hard conversations and holding people accountable. Are there specific stories or other specific skills that your 22 years in the Army have led to success now?
So where we were fortunate is the three of us would sit down and we'd communicate extremely well together. Jack, you remember, I'm going to go no names, right? But you may remember a time, I think this was still when you were in the 3 shop. Actually, I know for a fact it was while you were still in the 3 shop, but there was a leader in our organization who I absolutely love and maybe one of the greatest leaders that I ever served with. But there was a statement made that other than morale, what do we have to lose if we take this weekend away from our soldiers? Right. And nobody said anything. And I was the newest first sergeant, the newest leader in that room during the training meeting when that was said. And so I just fell into line because I realized very quickly that is what people did in the organization is you just fell in line. Right. But what a lot of people don't know is that, a little bit later, I went up to that leader and I just asked him for the why. Hey, why is this training so important that it requires taking a weekend and time away from soldiers? And why is morale so easy for us to get rid of or take away from, right? Then it was the simple conversation and me asking the question of the why, which one I think led to he and I having a really good, strong professional relationship. Like I said, he's one of the best leaders I've ever worked for, but also he provided me with understanding. And so I try to message people and I have these conversations at work all the time that if you have intent and you are able to utilize that intent and message and communicate it clearly to those that work for you or that work for that organization, things are so much better, right? Had I just taken it at face value, that original conversation in a training meeting and went down to the troop and said, hey boys, sorry, your weekend's been taken away and we're going to the field, right?
No questions.
Yeah. Put your hand down. The value in which would have been brought to training would have been extremely poor, right? And that leader would not have gotten the results out of training in which he wanted, right? But knowing the why and his intent and what fueled this decision and being able to shape that and push that to the organization, the subordinate organization, now we can go into that time and he's getting the results he wants because people believe in what they're doing. They are believing in the training and they know it provides value to the organization. But it also provides an opportunity to build relationships with others so that I can support both the higher headquarters and the subordinate organization, right? So messaging communication is absolutely paramount. And I think that's one of the things that had led to me being semi-successful throughout my time in the Army, with the ability or the willingness to listen, the willingness to learn, and then shape information and mold it to support my higher headquarters. And I continue to do that now.
Well, and also not just taking things at face value. There's a lot of people that can fall into the yes man category, especially when it's a superior officer, superior leader in the military. And that's something I've always respected about you is you are certainly not in that category. You ask the why, you ask the hard question that other people aren't, or maybe are afraid to, or think would have negative repercussions. And the ironic part is it actually helps you in the long term. Like,
Yeah.
it gained respect for you. It gained latitude for you to make decisions later on. And it only had positive effects, I think, long term. But you were the one that was willing to ask it.
Jack and I talked the other day about what made us successful as a team, right? And one, I think it started with Jack. Jack could have come into the troop and he could have been an ass and said, hey, XO, you're going to do this. Hey, first sergeant, you're going to do this. This is your lane. This is your lane. This is my lane. Stay in your lane. Right. But he chose not to do that. You and I had already been in position. Right. So you and I were already comfortable, and I don't want to say comfortable, but we understood our lanes. We understood each other's lanes, and we knew how to support the organization. And so rather than Jack pushing, he trusted us to make those decisions for the organization and believe in our abilities. Right. And I think having had experienced that in leaders like you and Jack, that just complete faith and complete trust in others really supports growth. And honestly, I think there's a lack of that across industry from what I've seen thus far, and having conversations with, hundreds of people at this point, is there's a lack of people that are just willing to have faith and trust in others. And
Yep. Well, also for a little context here, I realize we maybe glossed over the fact that all three of us were in the same cavalry troop in Germany, part of the 173rd. Jack is the troop commander, you as the first sergeant, me as the XO. And it's so rare that the stars aligned, but we got lucky, and people that we already got along really well. We already really respected one another, and then the stars aligned, and we all got to work together daily, hand in hand, which was incredible. Sitting in the back of Humvees and LMTVs, partially doing operations, but also partially just having a great time with great people.
I distinctly remember trying to tell Griffin to go home because he wouldn't leave until I left. And I'm like, no, that's not how this works. Like, if I have work to do and you're done, you need to go home. And he's like, no, I'm here. I'm good. I'm going to be here until you're here. So, and I mean, we crazy nights in that organization, but a lot of growth came from that too. And yeah, the fact that the two of you mentioned the trust, it was easy to trust you guys because you followed through and earned that trust immediately. There was already, not to mention just your capability, but you cared so much and you were capable. And that seemed to be, and it's not just the military, that's life, right? There's a lot of people who don't care and who are super capable, who are pretty good. And there's a lot of people who aren't very capable, but they care a lot and who are, they're probably pretty good too. But then, worst case, you get somebody who doesn't care and isn't very capable, and that's tough on the organization. But when you get people who care and who are very capable, that's when organizations start to thrive. And if you can just connect a couple people, then now you have an entire team that has a lot of care and a lot of capability. And then you're able to sprint. Organizations are able to sprint from there. So I think that's what I fell into with you two already rolling. And that was phenomenal for me. It was great learning, great, a good time to learn trust as a commander, right? Because not everybody gets lucky like that and gets two people who are incredibly capable two sides of the tripod there. So I was very thankful for that.
Yeah. And just so that everybody knows, I was breaking off both of these guys in workouts, even though I was quite older than both as well throughout the duration. Although they were both more fit than I was still breaking them off.
You're just lucky you didn't have that hair then. That would have caused a lot of wind drag on those runs.
But so, to go to the transition space again for a minute too. So you were talking about being capable and having care. And so, some of the conversations that I've had in the transition space that I find quite interesting, right, is people saying, hey, Max, be careful because people are going to find you a threat, or they're going to view you as a threat because you do care and you do work hard and you are providing value to the organization. So you may have some people that lose interest in you real quick, and not always just going to be peers, right? But also senior leaders in the organization, because they may be timid or think that there's opportunity that you may take a role in which they want later on in the future. So, you have to be careful in that perspective as well. But what I'm finding is that I'm not the only one that is capable, and I'm not the only one that is caring. And so I tie myself to communities like we had, of people that are like-minded and mutually supporting the organization for growth, right? And aligning with those people to find opportunities to continue to support growth, not just in our scope, but to support the organization as a whole across the board. And the other conversation, another conversation that ties into that too is, there's a lot of conversations about, hey, you could do this or you could be this based off of my current performance, right? And the belief in knowing that I can do those things because I do believe in myself, like I said, but also having some patience. I don't know how many times people have said, hey, Max, just be patient. Max, just be patient. Max, be patient, right? Because it's not that I'm looking to grow abruptly within the organization, because in my career map that I've developed within Honeywell, I even have lateral moves to support knowledge, understanding breadth of knowledge. But I do know that I am capable of achieving much larger roles within the organization. And so I do, I think people need to be mindful that there is a certain level of patience that has to be applied to, because we don't know everything when we get into the transition space. I certainly didn't know. I didn't even know this place existed up until 2 years ago. Right. And it's a large employer in Kansas City. And now here I am in a company I didn't even know existed. I mean, I knew Honeywell existed, but I didn't know that the FMNT side existed and that it was in Kansas City. Right. So, some patience is there, but continue to be the same old self and put yourself forward and learn as much as you can and have those conversations.
The conversations that you mentioned, right? So, when you reached out to these people via LinkedIn or what have you, was that focus on developing relationships with those people and having conversations, just like, just overviews, or were you really more going into depth as to what the jobs would be like and what was actually offered by the company? What were you focusing on when you first had those conversations?
Yeah, so a lot of them were just informational. And so there's about, say, 3 to 5 people. I'll speak specific to Honeywell, but there are some other companies out there as well. But probably about 3 to 5 individuals at Honeywell that I kept in contact for 2 years prior to ever getting into Honeywell. Right. So I probably talked to close to 30 different people at Honeywell across different fields within the organization. But there's probably about 3 to 5. They, for whatever reason, just the way that we connected, the way that they spoke, it connected with me. Right. And so those are people that I felt comfortable with. Those are also the same people that I refer people to if they have questions about the industry, because they are more knowledgeable than I am at this point. So I refer people to go talk to those same people that assisted in my learning and development. So some of it was for the relationship, some of it was for the network, some of it was for information. Now, when it came to gaining understanding about the organization. So, I interviewed with the Hiring Our Hero stuff with Honeywell FMNT and KCNSC, and they offered me the position to be a quality supervisor for the Skillbridge opportunity. And I took it, right? And I had a couple other offers out there to different companies, but I took this one knowing that there was not a guaranteed opportunity at the company. But I believed in myself. And so what I had found out through this internship or this Skillbridge opportunity, and it's not Honeywell, it's a majority of companies, I think, is that when they receive these Skillbridge or fellowships or internships, whatever you want to call it, a lot of times there's no real glide path established, right? It's, hey, we get you for 120 days. So come on in and we'll figure it out together, right? Well, I think that's crap, right? So I think I started on a Monday, and by Thursday, I had a macro level step-by-step 12-week program that I pushed to the talent acquisition team, right? Hey, this is what your Skillbridge opportunity should look like. And this is how it could be aligned across 12 weeks, right? Now, looking back retrospectively, that initial push that I had provided them wasn't very good, nor was it very thorough. But what I've since done, since having been hired into the organization, is I realized that not everybody is the same, right? And not every career field is the same. And to gain exposure and understanding, especially for service members, it's about maximizing organizational knowledge, right? So I developed 2 different 12-week models and sent it to the TA team. It's up to them to do whatever they want with it, right? But so one is for those that have career specific certifications or degrees, whether that's something cyber, IT, engineering. We have a ton of engineers, right? So if you have a degree or certification in there, right, then they field you and funnel you through those, right? But people like me who, is a background in education and workforce development, I can't do the engineering stuff. I couldn't do the IT, I couldn't do the cyber, right? So developing a 12-week system that supports, hey, 2 weeks in quality, 2 weeks in manufacturing, 2 weeks in purchase product, 2 weeks and here, 2 weeks in here to better to hit at the surface level several entities within the organization. But additionally, so does two things really. One, it supports understanding what is going on within the organization on a much broader level, but also it better supports creating a network for that service member, right? So if we want to create true opportunities for service members within the organization, we have to support their network as well. And that's extremely important.
I want to highlight the fact that you kept in touch with people for a couple years prior to even starting this. I mean, that's the first step is like reach out in general and get a broader perspective and talk to some people. But you took it the next, way beyond that and continue to keep in touch, which I have to imagine set you up for success in the Skillbridge and beyond. I mean, that's a great lesson for folks just to keep persistently those relationships alive. Can you talk a little bit more about your Skillbridge experience? Was it a natural, did you go into it with the intention of, hopefully this would result in a job? And was it pretty easy to get it approved through chain of command and all that sort of stuff logistically for people?
Yeah. So starting off as far as the approval for hiring heroes in Skillbridge, I think that the first complication I had was not understanding all the deadlines that were aligned to it, right? So initial deadlines was approved and thought I was good. And then I think in September that said, hey, you have to have all your SFL TAP training done by like October 12th or something like that, right? And I hadn't done SFL TAP yet. And I'd just come back from Egypt. I was gone in Egypt and Oman for nearly 60 days leading up to that. So I had like 3
on vacation.
Weeks. Yeah, on vacation. Yeah. I frequently vacation in Oman and Egypt.
Thankfully, SFL TAP only takes a couple of weeks. So you were good.
Yeah. Well, so what I found out in the process was, because I was freaking out, I was about to lose this opportunity to participate in hiring our heroes. But what I found out is you can do SFL TAP online. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much easier. And so I did SFL TAP online. And then I also registered for the in-person course. And, I tried to expedite the online one to meet requirements, but I didn't want to lose or negate the importance of what SFL TAP is. So I still went to the in-person one to ensure that I got all the training. And then as far as approval through the chain of command, I hear stories about, people that are not getting support from their chain of command. I know people in this conversation that may or may not have gotten support from their chain of command, right? But I did. And I think some of that was due to my position. I was at United States Army Central Command and, Lieutenant General Frank and Command Sergeant Major Garza were extremely supportive. When I showed up to United States Army Central Command, Sergeant Major Brian Disk was the G3 Sergeant Major. And I think the very first conversation we had was, hey, Sergeant Major, I'm going to retire in 2 years. So you get the best part of me for the next 12 to 18 months, and I will do anything and everything you ask of me. But just know that last 6 months to a year, like I'm not going to be touched. I'm going to make sure that my family's taken care of. And so he supported conversation between me and the CSM, and, Sergeant Major Garza and General Frank were super busy. I don't know if people know this out there, but the Middle East and Southwest Asia sometimes are pretty hot spots. I know it's give and take. There hasn't been much going on there for the last,
crazy.
30 years, but yeah, stuff goes on there occasionally. So they were super busy, but Sergeant Major Disk set up to make sure that I had correspondence and touch points with Sergeant Major Garza. And told Sergeant Major Garza, my intent is to retire. And initially he's like, I don't know that this is the right thing for you. It's definitely not the right thing for the Army. And then I explained my story to Sergeant Major Garza and what made my decision to retire. And he said, whatever you need, we will support. I submitted my packet and it was taking a little bit longer than it should have to get through the systems. And I had an open channel to Command Sergeant Major Garza, and I sent him a message and he said, too easy. And then he messaged me a little bit later. He said, it'll be signed in your inbox by this afternoon. And it was.
Wow.
Right. So, but not everybody has those developed or established relationships to support it. I was fortunate enough to have had those networks and those open channels to support. So, really what I would ask is for anybody out there that's in a position to leverage and support somebody that's wanting to utilize the Skillbridge opportunity to maximize. The organization's not losing anything. You're already accounting for a loss. Let them be gone. Let them take care of themselves. Let them take care of their families, because the message in which they're going to provide about the Army long term is going to be that of a good story, right? The Army allowed me to do this, or the Marine Corps allowed me to do this, or whoever, right? Not, I had to do this on my own time because the Army or the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force didn't allow me this opportunity, right?
100%.
So I was super fortunate because I did have a really good chain of command that was supportive of my intent and what was best for my family. And I've been fortunate for most of my time in the Army. I had leaders that supported my family and what was best for us and best for my career, best for the organization. And, really I've found that just over time, if you're willing to share your story and be transparent, you're going to get good results in the end, right? Regardless of what it is. And then as far as the Skillbridge opportunity, like it was all about trying to maximize the opportunity to learn, but also trying to show value added, right? So asking my boss, hey, what are your expectations of me? Asking my boss's boss, what are your expectations of me? Talking to my boss's boss, hey, what are your expectations of me? And then having other leaders within the organization that said, hey, you know what? This Max guy might have something going on. He might be good. I'm going to give him this project, which should probably not be done by him, but somebody that we know has long-term stability within the organization. I'm going to let Max do it. And then he's going to brief 3 levels ahead of him. Right. And so I was fortunate enough to be tied into some really great people that helped push me and get me into touch points with senior leaders across the organization. As far as like within a role, there wasn't a whole lot of role specific stuff. There were some times that I felt a little uncomfortable because, I wasn't in there I was a quality supervisor, right? But I didn't really have the roles or responsibilities because I wasn't a real or true employee to the organization. I was labeled intern in the system. So, when it came to like, if we had to do disciplinary actions or one-on-ones with some of the employees over, hey, you did this wrong or you did this wrong. Like I could have some of the basic stuff, but as far as really holding people accountable, I wasn't able to do that because I was not a true employee of the organization. And so there were some difficulties.
Do you think that the benefit of having that short internship outweighed that cost that you just mentioned? As in like, you weren't just joining the organization and able to just pin your ears back and go, or did the benefit of being able to take a soft start actually, was that a good thing more so than it was a hindrance?
Well, I think there's pros and cons to it. So I think had there not been some restrictions there, I always run the risk of potentially running myself out of an organization, right? I may have came into the organization too hard or with too high of expectations. Expectation management is something that I continue to struggle with throughout the transition space, right? I'm used to being a part of organizations where people want to do better and people want to continue to grow and want to develop. The reality is that out here in America there's a lot of people that are okay with being content and they're good with where they're at. And the good thing is that we need people like that, right? But I'm just not used to it and it makes me uncomfortable, right?
That's why you and we all need to hear, just be patient.
Yeah.
On a regular basis.
Right.
Yeah. And that's so true. It's absolutely true. But so I think there's some good to it, right? But I think had there not been some of the restrictions too, I probably could have tried to do more. But at the same time, it was, hey, I'm not, because I could only go into about, I don't know, maybe 10% of the buildings because, classification stuff. So I didn't
found your way into 10% more.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't get into the building, but I could get into hearts. So that's where I was trying to win people over. It's
that online training that we have to take. Like if somebody follows you through a door without a badge, like stop them. That's Max.
Unless he's got an amazing smile, then just let him in.
I was having a conversation with somebody last night at work. One of my teammates was doing some online training. And so, in the Army, we have ALMS. Honeywell, it's ELMS, ELMS, right? And probably no relation whatsoever. But I thought for sure, hey, when I am out of the Army, all this online training crap, it's going to stop. It's done. I have done more online training since I've been out of the Army than I ever did in the Army. It is ridiculous.
You were just building your skill while you're in the Army. Your fast clicking skill.
We did have one question that we've been asking everybody, and it's really just asking you if you have one ask and one give. So asking our eventual organization of listeners and people who are following us, you can ask one thing of them, and then also provide one thing that you'd like to give to them.
Yeah. And so I think I would ask that you not forget about the people that came before you or after you, and ask that you continue to support our military community, our veteran community, right? I am finding it to be all too familiar that we are often not supporting one another. I think people think by putting services on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever that actually supports, but I think it's the genuine connection and the conversation that supports true growth, right? So I'd ask that people continue to be open to have conversations, even if you don't have time, even if it's a 5-minute phone call every now and then, just say, hey, I was thinking of you. I think this is something that could support you in your growth as you transition, right? I've had several of those. I've helped with a couple of those, I think, maybe, but continue to serve and can continue to support unselfishly because it's the right thing to do. It can be extremely difficult for a lot of people to go through this transition. I'm fortunate because, like I said, I have a wife that trusts me wholeheartedly and knows that or believes that I will make the right decision for the family. So I am blessed in that aspect. The one thing that I'd give, I guess, take a chance, right? Just take a chance, bet on you. Nobody should take a chance on you if you're not willing to take a chance on yourself, right? So it's okay to blindly put yourself out there and ask for help, right? Or ask for a handshake or whatever. I don't know that it's okay to ask for a handout. I don't think it is. I've gotten into disputes over whether veterans should get discounts at restaurants or not, right? Which, I know it sounds stupid, right? But we all chose to volunteer to serve. And so it was our choice, and we did so not knowing that there would be people that provide discounts or handouts to us in the future. So, ask for help, but don't ask for a handout. Do the hard work and put in the effort, because at the end of the road, like that truly matters. And that will be seen by others, that you put in the effort, that you put in the work, and you took a chance on yourself.
Awesome. Max, do you have any final thoughts or kind of parting piece of advice? And that was great advice in itself, but I guess within the context of the way that you speak to some of the union employees that you mentioned, maybe the way that you coach them or things that you try and advise them on, is there any advice you'd have for people listening to this that are going through the transition or thinking about it?
Yeah. So care, right? Take the opportunity to learn. When I have the conversations with a lot of people, and that's what drove me to want to be a part of the Veteran Employee Network, is because I was having a lot of conversations with the union people. Like I said earlier, right? They didn't know that they were eligible for any sort of benefit, whether that's disability, education, home loans, whatever. They had no idea. So as a service, we are failing to provide them with the information that they need. And, I would even look at some of the resumes, because some of them would have degrees and certifications, and, well, hey, how come you aren't pursuing other roles? And then I would look at the resume that was approved through SFIL-TAB. This isn't just the Army. This is across the board, all branches of service, right? I look at the resume, and I don't know who said it was good, but, you'd find misspelled words or improper grammar. It wouldn't be formatted, and, things like that. You have to care. And with that, I've also found myself that, this is a conversation that Jack and I had once when he was the commander and I was the first sergeant, when it came to people and how you lead people, but you can't care more than the individual, right? So the ones that you can help, they're worth helping. The ones that don't want the help, they can figure it out, right? They also have to give. So sort through the people and show genuine care. And I think they'll see that care, and they'll want to be successful and support the organization because they believe in the team and the team that you build.
And we talk about how the 3 things that so few people actually do, but that everyone would hopefully do, or that we wish everyone could do getting out of the military of any branch, is Skillbridge, what you did, using a VA home loan and really taking your veteran medical claims process seriously as you get out, because I think all 3 of those are really underutilized, but can set somebody up for the rest of their life in a way that can really change the trajectory of their whole family.
Yeah. And so I went through the disability process, right? I used a VA home loan because my family, we just built a house. And, my oldest daughter is getting ready to use the post 9/11 GI Bill. I put in for all those benefits, right? So like, I'm not just talking and telling people they need to utilize and maximize the opportunities that are provided them by serving, but I'm doing those same things, right? So, and taking the time to research and understand it so that I can promote better understanding and awareness to our community.
Absolutely. Well, this has been awesome. Getting the trifecta back together, having the stars align yet again. We'll have to do it in person, probably over some Kansas City barbecue here soon.
I'm good with that. And then after Kansas City, I guess we can do it on the beach over snow cones.
Tell you what, Griffin, are you ever in that area for work?
Kansas City, yes. Yep.
Yeah. So next time you are, let me know and I'll try to make it happen. I'm sure I can go on some lending trip or something that I can, justify a mortgage broker trip to Kansas City.
Let's go. Lend all of us some snow cones in Kansas City. I like it.
Thank you guys so much for letting me be a part of this. I love you guys. I miss you guys. I'm thankful for having both of you in my life. So thank you very much.
Likewise, man. And thank you, Max, for what you do for veterans every day, for people at Honeywell and otherwise across social media and other places. I mean, it makes a big difference. And so anyone listening to this, find Max or someone like Max, Mia Jack as well, who will for free help you out to make the right decisions post-military because it's important.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Veteran Ventures Podcast. If you heard something interesting or found the show to be helpful, send it to a friend who is transitioning out of the military or considering a transition. We'd also really appreciate if you left a rating and review of the show. That helps us reach more people with these amazing stories of successful veterans. We'll catch you next time on the Veteran Ventures Podcast. And until then, go do the thing. Make that decision, have that conversation, and go find your next mission.